and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Bradbury Group, New Zealand's best weekly political argument, hosted by the militant, Marxist, anti-Santa, Martyn Bradbury. The Bradbury Group is streamed live on Rover, Sky TV, YouTube and Facebook. Proudly sponsored by Aotearoa, journalism you can trust. Let the arguments begin.
Kia ora Aotearoa. The true demarcation of power in a late-stage capitalism, liberal, progressive democracy is the 1% richest plus their 9% enablers versus the 90% rest of us. Welcome to the Bradbury Group, New Zealand's best weekly political argument. I'm your host, the editor of the daily blog, Martyn Bradbury. Bomber to my comrades, Mr. Bradbury if you're nasty. My pronouns are us and we. Coming up on this evening's show, the political panel all-stars tonight are Labour Party finance spokesperson Barbara Edmonds, Māori broadcaster and political commentator Matthew Tukaki, and union hardman Michael Wood. Tonight's one-on-one in 10 is New Zealand educational academic Professor Welby Ings on his incredible new book, The NCEA Changes and the Role of Public Education in New Zealand. Shout out to Kiwi Skirt and Chewy from BHN moderating tonight's YouTube page. Good evening to all the Bradbury Easters online watching right now. Your comments will appear on screen as we go. Shout out to our Wātea Facebook, Rover and Sky TV whānau. And our Twitter panel this evening is Tim Selwyn. He'll be tweeting live online at Twitter, hashtag the Bradbury Group. Before all that, however, is this week's War on News. Brothers and sisters, last week saw the National Party release the weirdest attack advert on teenagers New Zealand has ever witnessed. It starts out with an unemployed teenager playing video games with what appears to be a Labour Party Gumby. While they are playing, a weird-looking National Party gimp bursts into the room and turns the video off, making the teenager scream, run away, and apparently find a job. So much to unpack here. Firstly, why is Labour shaped like Gumby playing video games with a teenager? Because that seems pretty cool. If they throw in a bong into the mix, I'd vote for that. Secondly, why are National in a blue gimp suit? And why are they breaking into the house? Shouldn't someone call the police? Thirdly, why is National so smooth down there? They are like a Ken doll, but with less testosterone. This is the strangest sadomasochistic gimp movie made since Pulp Fiction. National are channeling a lot of small dick energy here, just to give teenagers on the benefit the bash. How does any of this help 18 and 19-year-olds find a job? It's like the National Party have run out of actual policy and are now just shitposting for their trolls, which is fine if you're Sean Plunkett, not so fine if you're the government of the day. And finally, in this week's War on News, research released last week shows a, quote, catastrophic for humanity warning issued as planet Earth hits a new climate change tipping point. Dr. Mike Barrett, Chief Scientific Advisor at WWF UK and co-author of the report, said, and I quote, "The findings of this report are incredibly alarming. That warm water coral reefs are passing their thermal tipping point is a tragedy for nature and the people that rely on them for food and income." He says this grim situation must be a wake-up call that unless we act decisively now, we will also lose the Amazon rainforest, the ice sheets, and vital ocean currents. In that scenario, we would be looking at a truly catastrophic outcome for all humanity. We are not going to wake up at all. We still think taking our own bags to the supermarket is us doing something. Brothers and sisters, we're all going to die on a burning planet thanks to the lies of the petro-industrial complex and their polluter mates. To quote the great warrior poet Oracle Mike Hosking, happy days. The political panel all-stars up shortly, whānau, but first, this week's one-on-one in 10 with New Zealand education academic Professor Welby Ings on his brilliant new book, The NCEA Changes and the Role of Public Education. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome to the show and thank you for being available to the Fourth Estate. Your democracy is grateful.
Kia ora, mate.
Professor Welby Ings, at a time when we have seen mega strikes around the country from teachers and huge changes with NCEA mooted, you have an incredible book out on education called, got it here, Invisible Intelligence, Why Your Child Might Not Be Failing. This is the second time you've appeared on our show because I was so impressed with your book. I wanted you back on in light of the current debate swirling around public education because I think you have so much to contribute to this discussion. Welcome back. Firstly, how has the reaction to your book been?
The truth is, every couple of days you get an email from somebody who tells you a deep story about someone they love who is succeeding now, but who had a really hard time. And in truth, there's a lot of self-help books out there. I wanted to put a book that would make research put its arm around your shoulder. You actually use evidence to go, the difference in your child is actually their uniqueness. It's not their negative. It's not their deficit. And so it's had a very human reaction. I mean, it's had wonderful reviews and stuff. I think they released the audio book today,
right.
And because they always wait a few months.
Yeah.
So it's done. I think it's done well. A lot of speaking engagements.
Sure.
I guess it's doing what I hoped it would do. It would give heart that would make people say no to things.
Many moons ago, I actually trained to be a teacher and I have a graduate diploma in teaching, but didn't progress it because I didn't feel the educational environment would allow me to teach the way I wanted to. After reading your book, I have found a newfound faith in what could be done with public education. So let's kick it off here. What do you mean by invisible intelligence?
So I believe all people are neurodiverse. It's not a belief. It's just fundamental. We're sitting here and people are listening and from 10 minutes of this discussion, we will all take away different emphases because we read information differently. And that'll be based on what we've got in our backpack and our experience, what's front of mind at the moment. So if it's evident that all humans are diverse, you have to have an education system that is sophisticated enough to deal with that. So you can't bring in systematic and assume that replaces rigor. It doesn't. So what I tried to do with the book was look at some of kinds of thinking that don't sit in the spectrum of what we traditionally consider intelligence, but actually are very high performing levels of intelligence, very high. Sometimes they're hidden in what we call artistic thought or non-linear thought. Sometimes they even get turned into problems because they don't fit neatly into an under-resourced education system. But I love my job. I love my job. And I get to work with extraordinary thinkers. Most of them are uneven. Most of us are. That's part of the beauty of living in a society. We have uneven people and collectively we gravitate towards what's going to be effective. And I just thought there has to be something more tangible to talk about in a recognizable way about ways that people think that sit outside what is measured by a very, very crude and under-critiqued ruler.
You talk about a very revealing moment in the book where you took a team of academics out on a hike as a team-building exercise. There was an injury, a lot of blame for getting lost, and the bus driver, with very little formal education, ended up showing more intelligence than the entire group of academics. Can you expand on that example?
Yeah, at the heart, the punch of that story was that the academics called him clever rather than intelligent, but he actually showed embodied intelligence. So we got lost. Like, I'm a Kiwi. This was in Scandinavia.
Yeah.
And I should have known better because I love the bush. I love tramping. And I took these group of, they're actually philosophers.
Yes.
And there was some trouble and these were not bad people.
Sure.
But they'd reached a situation where their environment had become toxic and they weren't good with each other. And so I said, look, rather than a wall with sticky notes and everybody reading back, let's go for a day's tramp. I had to explain what tramp was, the Kiwi concept. And so there was this walk through the forest, and we took lunch, and so the idea was that in each section of it, you would be walking with sometimes next to somebody who you'd attacked as a scholar,
Right.
but you would be listening, and there would be a question, and you would have to be able to talk back to the group about what that person believed about that thing. And so it was getting people to listen, but actually it was getting people to help each other, to actually understand we're all human beings. And beyond writing poisonous things about each other in passive-aggressive ways in academic texts, we actually need each other. And so it had all gone pretty well until we got, there'd been a slip, and we lost the track, and it was just like everything a Kiwi should not have on their CV,
Yes.
And one of the academics injured herself, and we couldn't go back, and we couldn't find the track. And in the end, it was so we got lost, and it was the bus driver who managed to work out by looking at the top of the canopy that there was a road somewhere bulldozed, and he got us out, and he was. He had a bit of a dodgy sense of humor, let's be honest. He'd not endeared himself to academia with his mosquito jokes. But at the end, his ability to read the world, but also to read the emotion of a fragile group who, while they could process knowledge in some ways, actually had very undercooked skills in how to deal with other human beings, philosophers,
right.
how to deal with other human beings in a stress situation. And I just loved the guy. I just thought he was amazing. I was deeply respectful and grateful, respectful of him and grateful. But he nailed for me again the fact that we create a kind of invisible class system around intelligence.
Yes.
And there are often people who are profoundly intelligent, but because they don't sit inside certain boxes, we will label what they do as clever rather than intelligent. But actually, when you look at what they're doing, how they can read something and put together a solution, that they have the ability to solve problems in ways that other people can't.
Professor Ings, your argument just in the book is that educational philosophies and pedagogy that prioritise time-stressed testing of students for quick problem solving using a myopic focus on reading, writing and arithmetic is inadvertently failing many kids. Why do you think that, especially when the Education Minister seems very focused on entrenching that educational style in NCEA?
Look, we're much more sophisticated than the human mind is something far more sophisticated than something that can be measured by the ability to read and write and process knowledge numerically. We're much more sophisticated than that. And so you need much more sophisticated way of understanding. And it's true back in the days, if we're haunted by a fragile past, we thought that you could release people into the world being good at maths, reading and writing. If you were to take our new generation coming through and put them into the world, having passed their literacy and numeracy tests, you'd be throwing them into a meat grinder. They wouldn't have the ability to discern between what is valuable and what's not valuable. They wouldn't know how to work with complex systems. They would simply know a system of pattern finding and calculation and the ability to read and write. And so we have to, it's our ethical responsibility as human beings to insist on something more sophisticated in an education system than a preoccupation with tired and limited interpretations of what it is to be literate in the world.
You make the point in the book that a public education system is there to serve the interests of all the students.
Educationally, and went into a much more socialized, context-driven education system. So it moved, and it flowered through the 60s and 50s, 60s, 70s. It wasn't perfect, but we have one of the most flexible education systems in the world. And things like NCEA and people being able to teach, having high teacher agency, where people can bring their gifts in and work in unique ways with kids. It became a distinctive part of an education system that is also distinguished by the fact that it has one of the largest state education systems in the world.
Yeah.
So it's only 3.6% of New Zealanders go to private school. Only 3.6.
Wow.
So in the OECD, that's 18. It's 18%. Tiny. Most people here go to this extraordinary, complex and flexible system called a state education system that is not broken. It is not broken.
Exactly.
But it is quite unique. And when we accept without critical questioning dead cats thrown on the table by people who say things like, oh, the literacy is terrible, or maths is really bad, or the examination system's wrong. They disconnect these statements from the actual research they're referring to because the research is invalid or poorly put together.
Yes.
And people get afraid because one of the most frightening, well, most evident ways of manipulating a group of people is to create a catastrophe where there isn't one, and then you can wheel in a fundamentalist answer.
It's manufacturing a crisis, isn't it?
It manufactures a crisis. And so, here's some things that a lot of people might not know. Our university system is ranked fifth in the world, behind the countries that are in front of us, Sweden, Switzerland, the Netherlands, and Hong Kong. Now, I have trouble with rankings, but these are where they were looking at not just the performance academically and citations, but also the quality of education experience.
Sure.
So here we have this country that has grown. We have a brilliant early childhood too.
Yes.
And we also have brilliant secondary and primary. We have a very good but an unusual system that is ideologically positioned very differently to, if you use your reference, I would call it Taylorist mentality, which is one that assumes that it's the role of education to train people to be good workers. So it's not. It's the role of education to help people live the most effective life.
Right.
Part of that means getting a job, but
Yes.
part of it also means living in a world where lies are polished to such an extent that you can consume them and get yourself hurt.
Yes.
So we have this, and we've given rise to people like Sylvia Ashton Warner, educators who shook the world.
Yes.
But this very humanist approach to education, which has at its core, everyone is a unique learner, and educators, it's their role to grow those people in the most fertile soil. And the way you do that is you don't wheel in systematized limiting systems on them. You make room and then you resource.
You also explore the importance of the relationship between student and teacher with a beauty and compassion that is genuinely moving. The political right seem to look at teachers as taxi drivers in an Uber world and have convinced themselves we can replace that cost with AI. But your argument about the importance of that human relationship really challenges that cynicism. Where do teachers find the emotional energy to invest in those students when public education is so under-resourced and their pay conditions so bleak?
I got saved because of a couple of teachers, and I see it happen over and over and over again. And I see it's my role to try and do the same thing, on standing on the shoulders of invisible giants to try and do the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's a duty of care. That's how I see teaching, as a duty of care.
Totally.
And you have to look after teachers, because they are investing way beyond what anybody who believes that you can have a teacherless curriculum, that you can just have something which is a sealed body of knowledge, and then teachers are reduced to disseminators and assessors of knowledge, completely misses what the sophistication of learning is.
Exactly.
So when you have a look at the meta research, it shows that the two biggest influences on a child's success at school. The first one, the big one, happens outside the school gate. That is the environment they come from.
Sure.
It has the biggest one. The second one is the relationship with the teacher.
Yes.
The relationship with the teacher. And at the moment, we see a crisis happening. And it was interesting that even the Teachers Council of New Zealand talked about this. while we're talking about money, there is a deep issue that sits alongside it. So at the moment, educators who are well educated and spend years in a system refining those skills are being subjected to a system that takes away their professional ability to exercise their skills.
Yeah.
And so the idea is they're going to wheel out these things and we're going to do standardized tests, and your job is to teach the package this way and then report on that.
Yeah.
And you just get rid of your education system. Just make a mill. But we can't, and that's why teachers push back. I mean, that's why parents push back.
Yes.
We have to push back because we have a duty of care to a nation we love.
Amen. Finally, Professor Ings, I believe public education is one of the few silver bullets we have as a society. And your book shows us how a different valued public education system could work. And you do that with wit, intelligence, and a deeply powerful conviction. For parents who are worried their kids aren't succeeding educationally, what advice would you give them?
At the end of the book, I had trouble finishing the book. I didn't know how to finish it up. So I stood back, and I think there are three things that absolutely will count. One is love. Now, I know that I'm not trying to be marshmallow here. By love, I mean belief, letting someone know that you truly believe in their ability to get themselves to a horizon beyond the one that they are. And that's not saying you're awesome when they're not. It's got a toughness to it too. But when you have lost belief in yourself, when you get to the end of an education system and you walk through the gate and your mana is in tatters, you need love. You need love wrapped around you that says there is a better you. There is a better you. And the second one is time. So formal education is poorly resourced with time. You put 28 kids in a class with one teacher. It doesn't matter how you reword it.
Right.
You can't do it. You can't do it. So the time that you spend with kids, your child outside of school, is hugely important, because we actually do most of our learning outside of school. We learned our first language outside of school. We learn how to persuade, how to huge skills outside of school. In fact, our ability to read is largely developed outside of school.
Yeah.
It's refined outside of school. So there's time, and the other one is work. It's hard. Learning is difficult, and none of us are equal gods. We are all uneven, so we recognize the unevenness, we build on the strengths and find how to fill in the gaps around the other things and go, and that is a wonderful way of being in the world. Because we're not all going to get 4 subjects out of 5 and stand up there going, I'm an equally balanced automaton. No, I'm a human being, and a flawed human being in a flawed world. I'm uneven and capable of greatness.
Thank you, comrade. Thank you so much. Any discussion on public education that doesn't include you isn't worth having. Folks, buy his book for Christmas, Invisible Intelligence, Why Your Child Might Not Be Failing. It's out now in all good bookshops. Thank you, Professor Ings.
Thank you, mate.
Okay, now to our political panel all-stars. Our first panellist is the Māori for all seasons, a political commentator, raconteur and broadcaster at the Mighty Wātea Network, media mogul and people's hero, Matthew Tukaki. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome to the show.
Always great to be with you. With an introduction like that, Martyn, you do me a disservice.
One word to describe the week, please, sir.
Pedagogical.
I love it. I love it.
Sorry, let me just explain this. I thought that interview was great.
Thank you.
I'm a big fan of structured pedagogical practice in our schools, but I do think it's time for a change and having a look at how we might innovate that. I love the fact that we all have some form of neurodiversity, as he's explained. There is another educator out there whose name is Dr. Maris O'Rourke.
Yes.
She served under David Longy as Secretary of Education. She then went on to serve others as well. Resident here in Auckland, she wrote a fantastic book called Zigzags and Leapfrog. She ended up being the Director of Education at the World Bank as well. And I've had the fortune of spending a lot of time with Maris. I think she must be in her late 80s. Anyway, there's a poem at the end of her book called Tangi Time. Got to get a reference to Te Ao Māori in there somewhere. But she talks about pedagogical practice extensively, not just in the K-12 school environment, but as a journey of lifelong learning.
Yes.
And how pedagogical practice can also apply in the workplace. I think we do our workers a disservice by training them to be compliant workers.
Yes.
You turn up at 9 o'clock, you go home at 5 o'clock, and all you do is do this. And if you do anything more than that, we may or may not pay you a bonus, or we may or may not give you some sort of credit. Pedagogical practice is more about, in my line of thinking anyway, in particular listening to your last guest, is about how you can create a workforce that's much more amiable, intelligent, and also fits the purpose for the world that we're in, not the world that we used to be in.
Yeah.
Right, great term, pedagogical practice.
Our next panellist is a mother of 8, a high-ranking Jedi Knight and the left's last great hope. She's House of Gryffindor with a lightsaber, Labour Party finance spokesperson Barbara Edmonds. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome to the show.
Oh, tēnā koutou. Yeah, it's good to be on. Man, Mike, he said like one word.
You can't limit Matthew Tukaki to one word. One word to describe the week, please, Barbara.
I actually got 2.
Yeah.
And it's on. It's on. Let me roll up my sleeves. For you.
Do it. And last but certainly not least, his nickname is Molotov Cocktail for his militant union tactics and devil-may-care charm. The former Labour Party Cabinet Minister and constant champion for the underdog and the lowest paid workers, Etu's Unions negotiation specialist, the Honourable Michael Wood. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome to the show. One word to describe the week, please, sir.
Medicard. The idea that every New Zealander can have in their wallet this basic little tool that gives them and their family access to free healthcare.
It's magnificent,
I think
isn't
it has the potential to be an institution in the way that KiwiBank, KiwiSaver, public health and public education are for many New Zealanders.
Amen.
And I think
Preach.
people are going to love it.
Love it. Brothers and sisters, let's get into tonight's show. Issue 1, mega strike unions versus the government versus the economy versus Labour's capital gains tax and future fund. Who is good for what? Issue 2, how will new welfare sanctions help Kiwis get jobs? And issue 3, latest Kapa Kingi drama. Can Labour plus Greens plus Te Pāti Māori work together to overthrow this government? Plus, we'll have a final word at the end of the show where each panellist gets to go to the mountaintop to see who breaches broadcasting standards this week. My money is on Barbara. Comrades, let's get into tonight's show with issue 1 and the ongoing economic pain and strikes. Michael, we have seen this government lash out at the mega strikes and unions for being political with threats to pass laws to curtail strikes, but these unions are striking because this government are underfunding and undermining public services. When they kneecapped pay parity to balance the budget, that was political. So why shouldn't the unions be political?
Well, look, I joined 30-odd thousand people, nurses, teachers, firefighters, mental health nurses and others marching down Queen Street on Thursday. And there were people from the balconies and the windows leaning out and applauding those heroes of our country.
Right.
And if this government and idiots like Simeon Brown think that they're on to a good thing by lecturing and belittling and threatening those people who our communities value so much, then I say carry on with that, because I know what side New Zealanders are on. It's with our nurses, our teachers.
What you're looking to say was carry on up the Khyber, Simeon Brown.
That's right.
Follow-up question. For many years, the unions have relied on lawfare to force the government to raise wages and working conditions, which is fine and dandy when you are facing a good faith government. But this hard right government intends to smash and destroy worker rights. Has the union movement finally woken up to the need for mega strikes and to fight back?
Well, what you saw on Thursday was the biggest industrial action in since 1979.
Yes.
How many is that? 46 years.
Yes.
So it was a real milestone movement in terms of working people coming together. Now, look, no group of workers go out on strike easily. It's actually really, really hard for working people to be brave enough to go forward, to lose a day's pay.
Exactly.
And deal with everything that comes with it, particularly if you're a nurse or a teacher and you are just utterly dedicated to your kids and your patients and those people that you serve. So it's really got to mean something for you. And the thing I got out of listening to those nurses and teachers is it was nurses who were saying, I'm worried because we're losing people to Australia and we don't have enough people on the ward to keep people safe. Firefighters who are saying our kit and our trucks are falling to pieces and we're worried that it's going to cost someone their lives one day. It's actually about whether we can have public services that New Zealanders need. And I think that's why there's so much public support among these workers. And yes, the union movement will use a wide range of tools. Sometimes workers will vote to strike. Sometimes you use the court. Sometimes you use other tactics. And I think increasingly what you're seeing are sophisticated campaigns from unions and workers to make sure that their voices are heard.
And the mega strikes work, right? They actually work. It forces the government to pay attention.
It sure does. And, I think if this government was listening or observing anything on Thursday, they'll realise they've got a problem because they've carved out a massive fiscal hole for themselves. They've left themselves no space to deal with for reasonable pay settlements and investment in these public services. And these people are determined on behalf of their professions. They're not going to give up. So I think the government's got itself in a huge corner here.
Barbara, Labour needs to win back those voters who voted Labour in 2020 and then voted National in 2023. A limited and targeted capital gains tax that allows for 3 free doctor visits annually alongside your future fund are the perfect policies to win that soft blue vote back. This is clever politics and shows Labour are serious about winning back the middle. What other policy is being considered?
Well, we'll have lots more policies to announce, as you know, in due course. You've been trying to do this to me all year around tax, so you finally got your tax one.
And it was a great. It was great. It was a great announcement.
I mean, and ultimately, right throughout the campaign trail. And then in my first year as the finance spokesperson, I kept drilling Nicola Willis around, will there be cuts to frontline services? Do you stand by your statement there'll be no cuts to frontline services? What we saw last week were the workers, were the nurses, were the doctors, were the teachers, the firefighters who are saying there are cuts to frontline services. We want fair pay. We want safe staffing. And for the government to basically make this some sort of political nonsense just shows that actually everything that they were elected on to make things better, they've actually made it worse and they've broken their promises to Kiwis.
Follow-up question. Dividends from state-owned enterprises are currently funding health and education. Putting them into the future fund is fine, but won't that cut into public services? What will replace the dividends revenue if they're going into the fund?
Well, they're also currently paying for an underwrite for gas subsidies, right? Oil and gas. They're also currently covering $2.9 billion of interest deductibility. They're also covering $500 million of digital tech tax breaks.
Yeah.
By saying that we're going to put this at arm's length, we're going to put it in a fund that's for New Zealand by New Zealand, we're saying we're depoliticising it. We're saying in legislation needs to be reinvested in the economy for the public good. Let the guardians of the future fund do that investment decision. And actually for government, we basically will not have this slush fund that we can spend on pet projects that go against a transition to clean energy, that go against fairness. So ultimately, there will be money to fund healthcare costs. There will be money to fund education. But what we're saying is let's use those assets better. Let's use those dividends more smartly and use it for the public good, such as transitioning to clean energy and resilient infrastructure.
The 3 free GP visits, I think for many New Zealanders would be the difference between getting some good healthcare and not having any at all. My concern is, though, that we've seen a lot of private GPs and private funded medical organisations setting up. Will your three free GP visits a year, is that going to be funding community public GPs, or is it going to be able to help the private sector as well?
So it's universal. So it's to the person wherever their primary GP service is.
Yeah.
So obviously it's universal. But the major thing which Dr. Aisha Viral had said today is that for every dollar we spend in primary care, we save $10 in tertiary health care. So that's hospitals. So we save that money.
Right.
So by investing it earlier, the whole point is to be able to prevent it getting to the point where people need to go see the doctor because they can't afford to see their GP in the first place.
Yeah. Matthew, you had a poll on Wātea for the capital gains tax and you received one of the highest feedbacks you've had. What did the numbers tell you?
Well, it's one of those polls where it's not really a poll. It's more a question of the day.
Sure.
I mean, do you agree with the capital gains tax in Aotearoa, New Zealand? 1,900 comments, which is pretty large,
Yep.
and 2-1 in favour of a capital
Wow.
gains tax. A lot of them want to see more meat in the detail, if you like. A lot of them saying, well, there could be a combination between CGT evolving into or towards something akin to what the Greens have already released around the wealth tax. So there could be some common ground there, etc., etc. But overwhelmingly, people are supportive of it. I think over many years, people have accepted that it's on the way. It's just the form that it was going to take.
Yeah.
The substance of the announcement today, I think, is good in terms of packaging it in with an outcome such as health. I do think that the card, as Michael has talked about, is a really, really good idea. I think some of the detail can be overcome through stuff like bulk purchasing agreements and to me, which could also be an evolution within the health purchasing arrangements of our hospital system, a lesson learnt from the establishment of Te Ako Pai Ora and Te Whatu Ora. So there's all sorts of really good things in there. I do really enjoy, though, and Barb, great policy, this one. I do like the Future Fund. I do like a bit of Future Fund. But I do think it's about the possibility of what it can achieve into the future.
Yep.
If we can use the investment and the returns and dividends off the Future Fund to help pull back our liability of superannuation costs into the future as well, I think that would put us in good stead. The formula is the Future Fund of what they were doing with public service superannuitant liabilities in Australia.
Yes.
So there's a really good model here, but I think overall it's good. I did speak to Martyn Davidson this afternoon on air.
That's right.
And Martyn was a little bit unhappy with it, but, as you do, you negotiate your position when you get into government, don't you?
Follow-up question. 65% of voters support the mega strike.
Yeah.
So who has overcooked things here? The government's criticism of unions or the unions for the ongoing strikes? Who do voters blame?
Well, I think cooked has become a very laissez-faire term thrown about these days and best suited by those who are conspiracy theorists. But anyway, look, I remember the big education marches of 1993 when Lockwood Smith was the education minister, and I was carrying a loud hailer down Lambton Quay. What do we want? Free education. When do we want it? Now. I mean, that just doesn't leave your soul. I think this government has picked a fight, not with unions so much, but with the workers, and not recognising that many of those workers are also in the centre, the middle-class voters who voted for them the last time around, who are waiting this time with baseball bats for them. So this is not about what Simeon Brown or Brooke Van Velden or the other ministers say, those unions, those mean, nasty unions. No, it's what the unions are representing, and they're representing the very voters that put you into government that are about to kick your backsides out.
Quick round. What is more outrageous? Simeon Brown for considering laws that stop doctors and nurses from striking, or the Public Services Commission for funding adverts attacking the unions? Michael?
There's nothing outrageous about Simeon Brown. The word is just ludicrous. This is a guy who's supposedly a frontbench minister of the Crown who sort of puts up, joke messages in his windows to make fun of striking nurses and teachers. I just don't think anyone particularly takes the guy seriously. And as I said before, if he thinks he's gonna win public sympathy and support over and above the nurses, the medical professionals, the mental health nurses, he's got another thing coming. His job should solely be focused at the moment on how he fixes this issue, keeps these health professionals in New Zealand, instead of picking
and insulting them,
and just picking scabby little culture wars, which is pretty much the MO of this guy, right?
Barbara, what's more outrageous, Simeon Brown or the Public Service Commission and paying for adverts to attack the unions?
Well, if you want to come to an agreement with somebody that you don't agree with, you don't basically light a fire under their seat and keep stoking it. That's ultimately what Simeon Brown has done. And in relation to the Public Services Commission, we have come out quite concerned that they've gone over the line of political neutrality. So,
right.
Camilla Bellich has had a number of interviews on that.
Yeah.
So ultimately, you got a fire starter who keeps stoking it and basically burning the seat under workers, and then you've got a Public Service Commission that's releasing sponsored ads. So there's definitely some outrageousness.
Oh, Barb, I'm
on both
disappointed. Now I've got that song in my head, Firestarter. Oh, no, I did not need that tonight. Now who's going to bring out
sides. I don't realize
Tumbawamba?
you're a Prodigy fan.
Wow.
Now, who thought we'd see a Prodigy reference this evening? Comrades, we need to move on to issue 2 tonight. Last week, new sanctions for beneficiaries were put into effect at a time when unemployment is 5.2% and predicted this week to rise. Barbara, more than 60% of retailers don't plan to hire additional staff for the Christmas and New Year period, a Retail New Zealand survey has found. Where are beneficiaries supposed to find the jobs that this government's burnt off?
Well, the beneficiaries and the people who are looking for work have paid for a ticket to jump on a plane and have gone over to Australia, right? So there's 200 people that we are losing every day because of the choices this government has made.
Yeah.
The question is, where are the jobs for people to apply for? Like, where are they? They're not here. And the economy has gone so backwards that there are 36,000 fewer jobs now than when National took office. That's where they're going. They're not staying here. They're not seeing a future here. And they're saying that a plane ticket to Australia, where they could get higher wages, potentially better conditions, is where they're going.
Follow-up question. The first welfare sanction is a money management punishment that cuts welfare in half by 50% and forces onto a card that people can't use to pay rent or bills with. The second sanction is community work experience, which again is a set of hoops that, if not completed, leads to cuts in welfare. How does making it impossible to stay on welfare help beneficiaries get a job?
Again, where are the jobs? Where is the commitment from the government to grow jobs, help support businesses to create jobs? Where is the government economic development plan? It was growth at the beginning of the year, and all its spending has gone down.
Yeah.
Hey, can I just add to that? I think it's a really important point Barbara makes. I don't think we should see the sanctions as the issue. It's a symptom of a failing economy. That's what's going on here. We are seeing high levels of unemployment. The rangatahi Māori unemployment is twice, 3 times, 4 times sometimes of what the regular unemployment rate is. So there's that. But we're heading towards the fine line of the top of the band for inflation. That is remaining a big issue. We still haven't seen the wash through of the impacts of the Trump tariffs in the global economy.
No.
That's still going on.
Yep.
There are all of these other things that are happening, and we're still led to believe by the government that they're better at managing the economy than Labor is. That's a myth. It's just not fair. It's not accurate. But the sanctions are symptomatic of a play by the government to not address the real elephant in the room, which is the economy is on a knife edge. It is a problem for them. It's probably less of a problem for Labor until they get in and have to manage the books that they're inheriting. But the mere fact, that the government have ripped up a contract worth $500 million for the ferries, or alternatively are okay still giving tax breaks to tobacco companies and landlords and all these other things. It's like, again, symptomatic that they're not dealing with the root cause of the problem, which is our economy is tired. It is under a lot of pressure, and not much at all is being done to fix it.
Follow-up question. Only 1.2% of beneficiaries are currently not complying with the existing job-ready demands. So has this government just created new tactics to find ways to trip people up so they can be disqualified? Because this doesn't look like anything about helping people get jobs.
So, I was going to call you Martyn for a minute there. The reality is this government is about tactics, and the tactic is to find the whipping boy to go and whip and say to the public, you look at over there, they're stealing, they're thieving from you good, honest, law-abiding taxpayers. They've done it to Māori consistently over the last 2 years. They've just done it again with Maka. They're running out of things to whip Māori on, and so now they're going for the beneficiaries. You watch, they've already played part of their crime law and order strategy. So the modus operandi of the government is fear and loathing.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what they are doing.
Michael, MEC now wants 6 monthly reviews for beneficiaries, but hilariously, they cut staff so can't manage a 6-month review. Their solution is to use AI to find a discrepancy to penalise you with And then they will use AI to reject your claim, so you were forced to find a real staff member to try and get it back. Is this really the future of welfare?
Yeah, well, have a look at the Centrepoint scandal in Australia for what happens when big government bureaucracies start treating people like that. I'll tell you about the most worrying statistic in New Zealand public life at the moment. 25%, about 25% of under 25s not in employment, education or training. And the simple question is this one: is that figure higher or lower under this government's punitive policies like this, or under Labour's policies of investing in apprentices, lowering the cost of tertiary education, giving people a hand up and support into work and training and that kind of thing? And you know the answer to this. It's increased massively under this government because those policies don't work and because, as Matthew said, they've mismanaged the economy. So forget the absolute crap in terms of the tough on youth unemployment language that we're getting here. That is all it is. Actually look for what works and what doesn't work. This doesn't work. What we would do.
You raise a
works.
really good point, because in Australia, apart from Centrepoint, they also recently had another scandal, and it was called robo-debt. And what they were doing is they were using technology and call centres and all these things to recover debts that weren't real debts from beneficiaries and from people who owed money. And it caused suicides, it caused all sorts of hullabaloo. It led to a royal commission recently and so on. And this is the problem when you go too far with attacking some of the most vulnerable people in our society, you end up creating a bigger problem. And using AI to do this stuff, it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Michael, Minister Brooke Van Velden announced today a new WorkSafe board that will no longer have any worker representatives on it, which doesn't bode well for the beneficiaries who are out in the job market. Doesn't that level of arrogance to announce a WorkSafe board with no actual workers on it sum up how ideologically hollow the social policy we're getting from this government?
Well, I'd invite everyone to go out this week and see the Pike River movie to see what happens when you underregulate and undervalue the health and safety of people in the workplace. This is a minister who is looking to gut the legislation that was set up on a bipartisan basis after the worst industrial tragedy in our history, and is now looking to defenestrate the institution that should be looking after it. I was talking to the bloke, Bill Newson, who's currently effectively the workers' rep on that board last week. And actually, since WorkSafe was established, I think it was under Simon Bridges in 2014, there has been, a group of people, some who have got worker and union backgrounds, some who have business backgrounds, some who have health and safety professional and commercial backgrounds, who have worked collaboratively to set up an organisation that actually succeeded in reducing deaths by 25% in its first 5 years.
Yes.
And now she's turning all of that back. Because her narrow ideological vision of the world is just that you rip shit and bust, you let business do what it wants, you reduce regulations and let the market do its thing. Well, we saw what it led to at Pike.
Absolutely.
And we've got to turn this around, otherwise people will suffer.
Quick round, unemployment numbers are out this week. What are your predictions, Barbara?
Oh, they're going to be increased. I mean, when on Friday, I took an economist round to Partners Porirua. Partners Porirua helps young people not in education, employment or training, and links them up with workers. Obviously, there's people that have, programs that have had some funding cuts, but they actually said the major issue for them is that employers, even those that have always bent over backwards, they just can't offer these young people any jobs. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if numbers are higher.
Matthew?
Yeah, I think numbers will go up. I think we're entering into the pre-Christmas rush, so to speak. And now that the retailing sector has said they're not going to be hiring, there's not much. We're also starting to see school leavers enter into the casual and part-time worker market. So I think there's no doubt that unemployment will go up. It's just how much it will go up by.
Michael?
I suspect that is right, very, very sadly. I mean, the reason I do what I do, and I've had 25 years involved in the Labour Party, is I believe in the dignity and value of work and giving people meaning in their lives, and it's a tragedy when people can't do that. Remember that as unemployment goes up under this government in New Zealand, in most places around the world, it's actually been going down. When we had some of the lowest rates of unemployment up till 2023, this is Nationals doing, this government's doing.
Comrades, we need to move on to issue 3 tonight, and there's the latest move inside the Māori Party to suspend Tito Tokoro MP Kapikingi from the party, with so many progressive voters wanting to remove this government with a Labour, Green, Te Pāti Māori government. Can the left unite, or will Māori Party dramas sink the waka? Matthew, you had the big scoop on Wātea last night. Your thoughts, sir?
Look, a couple of things. I mean, I've been involved with Te Pāti Māori for a few years, although not now. And I was going to be the candidate for the seat of Waiariki before the Nobody Waititi was put in there. And I can tell you that the reason I decided not to proceed is because the party was broke and the policies needed a lot of work. And so I decided the time wasn't right. Today we see a bigger party. They've won more seats. They've got better policies. They've got their books in order. And so you've got to celebrate that as a success. Instead, what's going on is you've got some people who are saying, oh, no, everything's broken and henny penny, the sky's falling in. And, yeah, look, personalities, there are big personalities in there. But if everybody on the left agrees that it must be a one-term government, then I think everyone just needs to settle down, figure out what the machinations need to look like and be, or alternatively be prepared to spend another 3 years in the wilderness potentially. But happy days for Labour, of course, because some of those seats are now back in contention.
Certainly are. Barbara, there are a lot of people who say that Labour needs to rule out the Te Pāti Māori, that they're too radical, that it's scary, and the middle voters might flee. But surely a Labour, Green, Māori Party government, if possible, is going to be far better than a Labour, New Zealand First Green Party. Your thoughts?
Well, one-term government is what we're aiming for, right?
Right.
And to those that scaremonger around Te Pāti Māori, just remember who was the only political party that ever went into coalition with Te Pāti Māori. But ultimately, I agree with Matty that this is a matter for them. They need to sort that out. And what Chippy has said very clearly, if they want to be in government and they want to be ready for government, then they need to sort their internal issues out.
Amen. Michael, a Labour plus Greens plus Māori Party could be the most transformative government in New Zealand history since the Michael Savage Labour government, with the economy hurting voters. Will they want real material upgrades that Labour's incrementalism won't solve, especially if Winston is the handbrake? Is a Labour, Green, Te Pāti Māori government worth fighting for?
It is absolutely worth kicking out this government, which is doing incalculable damage to so many New Zealanders in our social fabric, and electing a progressive Labour-led government. And obviously we'll need to work with other parties as a part of that. I think what people are looking for, and you see this in New Zealand, you see it overseas as well. So, probably there are people listening who have been following the campaign of Zoran Mamdani in New York. People are kind of moving past this age of, sort of heavily smoothed over political communications. And I think what people want in an era in which this cost of living crisis is hurting so many people are some real tangible things that they can see are going to make a very real difference in their lives and the lives
free visits to GPs.
Of their families. It's stuff like that I think people are searching for and want to see us fronting with and want to believe that we can do that. So I think the announcement today was an outstanding start on that front, and it's more of those sorts of policies that really transform people's lives in a real way that are needed.
Quick round to you all. Labour plus National used to be 80% of the vote. Now it's 60%. Does that show a deep dissatisfaction with the mainstream political parties who seem to be gridlocked on policy in a polarised political environment, Matthew?
No, I think it's a trend that's going on worldwide. I mean, certainly it's happened over in Australia, where we're seeing the party votes primarily for Labour, the Nationals and the Liberal Party begin to wane somewhat. You see the rise of the Teals and the Independents and so on and so forth. And so the same is true in an MMP system in New Zealand. You're seeing the continuous and sustained rise of third parties. It's not to the detriment of the major parties. It's just an evolution of our democratic system. That said, people get a little bit sick and tired of instability.
Yeah.
And so in times of instability, they will probably turn to those two major parties for stability. But can I just say, guys, I mean, you're talking about the Labour, Greens and Te Pāti Māori coalition government. What about Winston and Labour? Come on, eh? Been here before.
Don't even start me. Barbara, your thoughts?
Oh, that's above my pay grade, Matty.
Oh, she's good.
Oh, that's a
she's
good one. That's a good one.
Michael.
Oh, look, we've got a year to go, and I'm a big fan of the old Peter Blake saying, what makes the waka go faster? What makes a boat go faster? And, for those of us in the Labour waka, we've just got to get out there, sell our message on every vote that we can. That's the best way I think we can change this government.
Comrades, we need to wrap the show with a final word. Matthew, your final word this week, please, sir.
My final word is tranquility, and a bit of a, if I can to explain, is a bit of a, a bouquet, if you like, to Tamapōtaka. I really like the fact that the government is investing more in our beautiful Tamaki Makaurau. So investing more from, I think, the tourist fee that they knocked together. Upgrading our tracks, our walking places, our conservation estate. Don't particularly like too much about what's going on in the Hauraki Gulf, but I think tranquility, because we all deserve a break, and we're better than our own backyard. Come to Tamaki Makaurau, and no, I'm not running for the Auckland Herald.
Michael, your final word, please, sir.
Oh, final word on Labour Day. I went for a walk with my family, including my beautiful victorious wife, the re-elected councillor for Aotearoa Puketapapa, and we walked the Fairy Falls track. Beautiful track, and it's one of those ones that council has probably had to invest quite a lot of money in to rebuild the boardwalk, because it's a Kāori dieback area. I imagine it was probably in the millions of dollars.
Sure.
But there were hundreds of people there that day enjoying it. It was just a beautiful public space.
Awesome.
And it just reminded me of the value of those kind of public infrastructure investments in terms of making this a good place for us to live. And that's, at a small level, the kind of stuff that we've got to fight for again.
Awesome. Barbara, your final word this week? Your
bleak
final
week.
word this week, please.
I got into politics 5 years ago and governance because I saw there were kids in my community who didn't have the same opportunities as my kids. And ultimately, that's what's driven me every day, is to make sure there's opportunities for other people's children. My husband and I, we're privileged. We've got 4 kids who will be at university next year. We've got 4 kids that'll be at college. That is hard work, and because we've got a village to help grow them. But I think deeply about the New Zealand we're leaving the next generation. And for me, the Future Fund was that type of policy that, KiwiSaver, Super Fund, Kiwi Bank, working for families, that is Labour policy. So ultimately, we want a future for our children here. If they decide to go overseas, then we want to be able to give them the opportunities to come back.
Yes.
And so that's what I'm fighting for every day. And I know that our Labour team is really committed to ensuring we have a future made here in New Zealand, for New Zealand, by New Zealanders.
Amen. Thank you, comrades. And now to my final word. Brothers and sisters, what this extreme weather from climate change hitting the country right now has taught us is how broken our resilience infrastructure is. The disconnect between the government's disastrous methane policy and their constant cutbacks on climate adaptation programs versus the predicted extreme weather events we are seeing now is so enormous they can't be ignored any longer. We are horribly underprepared for what is coming. The danger for the polluters and the alt-right is that with every passing year, the scientific evidence for climate change only gets stronger and the extreme weather gets worse. We need a massive upgrade of civil defence and far more resources spent on ensuring our infrastructure has the flexibility to withstand these types of extreme events. We need RSAs and maraes to be built up into community civil defence hubs. And we need a solar panel campaign to ensure a flexible electrical grid alongside better batteried cell towers. We need a civil defence that is far better resourced than they are now, with permanent cleanup crew staff on standby, because this doesn't get any better. Dr. Bryce Edwards highlights that the recent local council elections and lobby groups like the Local Government's Business Forum, a coalition including Business New Zealand, the New Zealand Initiative and Federated Farmers, openly calling for voters to elect candidates with, and I quote, commercial and financial acumen and a pro-growth and pro-development mindset. Part of the problem here in New Zealand is that business lobby groups can mask their polluter interests with dark ag money that the wider electorate can't see. The reason the AstroTurf alt-right are so focused on undermining local councils and governments is because the polluter interests that fund these groups want a government so undermined that when the realities of climate change finally get into the heads of muddle New Zealand, there isn't a government with the capacity to do anything about the polluters. You might not believe in climate change, but trust me, climate change believes in you. In solidarity, the revolution continues. Ka pai Aotearoa.
The Bradbury Group, New Zealand's best weekly political argument. The Bradbury Group is an independent podcast through the Rover Network, sponsored by Aotearoa News. After the show,